Serverless application on AWS. Managing servers, infra, and figuring out their scalability can be difficult. Imagine building apps without worrying about infrastructure. That's the power of serverless. Let's dive into AWS that can make it happen with API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. This video is part of AWS project series with hands-on experience, which you can follow along and even write these projects in your resume. Let's begin. So what is serverless applications? Serverless computing is a great way for application development. In this case, cloud providers manages the app for you. This means they are eliminating the need for managing the server. They take care of scalability, monitoring, and logging of the application, so that you can only focus on the app development. Rest is taken care of. This leads to a scalable and cost-effective way to create and deploy your applications. As part of this video, we are going to cover few of the components to create our serverless application. So the first component here is a service which can provide you with endpoint management. For this one, we are going to use API Gateway. API Gateway is the entry point for our serverless application. It will handle the incoming request from client and give the response from the backend service. We will use API gateways to create REST APIs. These APIs allows us to interact with our app using a standard HTTP request like GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE. API Gateway can also handle tasks like authentication, authorization, traffic management, and monitoring. For processing of the request, we are going to use AWS Lambda. So whenever a request comes to API Gateway, it will send the request to AWS Lambda by creating a Lambda event, and Lambda will send the response back to API Gateway. Lambda functions are small, self-contained units of code that can run in response of events. They can be written in multiple languages like Python, Node.js, Java, and more. The beauty of this application is that you only pay for the number of requests you are going to get in the API Gateway and the compute time required for the Lambda functions to do the processing. This makes it a cost-effective way. Now, any application might need to store the data, and in our case, we are going to use AWS DynamoDB for the storage. Now, DynamoDB is a fully managed NoSQL database service that offers fast and predictable performance with seamless scaling. In our example, we are going to perform the CRUD operations using DynamoDB. Let's try to create our serverless application. First, go to the IAM to create a role. This role will allow the Lambda service to connect to DynamoDB and to create logs in CloudWatch. Create role, AWS service, and for the trusted entity, we are going to use Lambda. For permissions, I am not going to select anything for now. Then the role name, Lambda API Gateway role. Then create role. Now let's check our new rule. Here there are no policies attached till now, so we will try to add some policy. We will create an inline policy. I will add some JSON component. These are some of the actions that we will try to take in the DynamoDB. And in resources, I will put star so that we can access any DynamoDB table. Now for the second rule, I will allow Lambda to create some logs in CloudWatch. Next, policy name. I'll name it Lambda DynamoDB policy. Okay, so this role is created. Now let's create the Lambda application. Go to Lambda, click on create function, author from scratch. I will set the name as Serverless Lambda. Architecture, change, use an existing role. I will select the role which we have just created. This will allow us to make some changes in DynamoDB. So this Lambda function comes with a boilerplate code. We will try to replace the code with our own. So I'll explain this. First, we are importing the print function just to print some logs. And then we have this Lambda handler function, which will try to get the event and the context whenever this Lambda function is triggered. And from the payload, whatever we get, this will try to get the required operation. And if there is a table name in the event, then it will try some other operations. Okay, let's deploy it and then we will test it. So this is successfully deployed. Now let's create a test event. This one I'm going to name it as echo op. I will replace the payload with a predefined payload which will trigger the operation echo, and our goal is to get the same data that we are sending it to the Lambda function. Now let's test it. As you can see, we get the response which are the same key and value pair that we have sent. So this means our Lambda function is working. We can even try the payload to create some data in the database, but for that we need to create the DynamoDB table first. So let's try to create the DynamoDB. Go to AWS DynamoDB, create table. Let's put the table name as Lambda API Gateway. Remember, whatever name you are giving here, you need to provide the same as the payload or as a table name in your payload. This will be our primary key, so I'll name it as ID. I am keeping other things as default. And create table. This will take some time. Let's create the API gateway. Once you open the API gateway page, it will give you some options. We are going to create a REST API, new API, and we can name it DynamoDB operations. Okay, so currently in resources we have only the base path, but we will try to create one more resource /dynamo, and for this path we are going to create a method. We will choose the post method. We are going to integrate with our Lambda function. Here it will give you option to choose your Lambda, and then you can click on create method. So we can see that the workflow is created, how your request is going to be processed using the Lambda. You can check for each stage by clicking on these tabs. Now let's deploy this API in a prod environment. So this one is deployed, and I can get the DynamoDB endpoint with post. So I need to just copy it from here. Now I will try to access this URL using Postman. Okay, so this is my Postman window, and I have added the URL here, and I set it to post request, and we'll try the same payload that we have tried with the Lambda function. Let's see how the function and the DB responds. Okay, so it is responding with the same key value. This means our application or our API gateway is able to connect with the Lambda. Now let's try to insert some data in the DynamoDB. For this one, I did put the operation to create. So I will change the payload accordingly. So here I am changing the payload to create and the table name to Lambda API gateway. It is telling me the requested resource not found. Let's check the application. Okay, we have the Lambda API gateway. Okay, this makes sense because the table name that we have given is LAMDA, but instead here I put LAMBDA. So I'll try to send it once again. Okay, now it shows the request status is 200. So this means we are able to add the data. Now let's try to get the data from the database. For this one, the operation that I have set in the Lambda is list. So I will replace the payload with list and I will keep this field as empty. Here the same issue, I need to change this table name. Okay, yeah, so it is giving me the right items as ID and number. So this shows that we can access DynamoDB from Lambda, and we are using API gateway to create such API endpoints, which can be used by other services or directly by the users to make some requests and to do some processing. This is creating your serverless application, and you will be only charged based on the number of requests which you are sending and the compute time taken by your Lambda function. Now in the end, you should clean up your resources. So the first one is Lambda API gateway. Then we have the API gateway. And then our Lambda function. You should also delete the role which we have created. Lambda API gateway role and then delete. Now, how can I finish the video without sharing an automation to do it? In AWS, we mostly use CloudFormation for creating and deploying required infrastructure. To do so, let's try to create a CloudFormation template. So this is the serverless template which we are going to use to create the CloudFormation stack. It will do the same things that we did individually. So first it will create the role with the required policies, and then it will create the DynamoDB table. Then it will create the Lambda function. This is the same code that we have used for creating the Lambda function. In case you don't want to put your code here, you can store it in S3 bucket, and then you can reference the S3 bucket code to here so that it will be created. And then it will create the API gateway, then the API resource. Here I have renamed the resource to DynamoDB manager instead of Dynamo. And then the API method. And then in the end it will deploy this to the staging environment prod, and for the output that we have copied manually from API gateway, this will be given as output of the CloudFormation. Let's try to use this template. Go to CloudFormation, click on create stack, choose an existing template, upload a file, I will name the stack as Serverless. For my convenience, I will delete all the resources which are newly created and would like to start again if something goes wrong. Now let's check out the events. The API gateway is created, API resource is created, other things are in progress. Okay, I think the whole stack is created now. We will go to the resources tab to check out the resources that we have created. So it has created the Lambda function, API gateway, gateway role, the permissions to invoke, the DynamoDB table, API resources, method, and deployment. Now let's check the output. This is the API URL that we are going to need to make the post request again. In the postman, I will try this new URL with our list operation. So here it shows the number of items to be 0 because this is a new table and nothing is stored in it till now. We can retry the create operation to add some data. Okay, the status code is 200. This means our data is added to the database. So this is how you create a serverless application. For the template, I will share that as part of my blog from my website. So you will get the code from there. Also the payload and the other permissions, Lambda function, all those things will be part of the blog. So do check it out. The link will be in the description box. I hope you like the video. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.